It's strange how quickly everything can shift, how one moment you're just going through the motions, and the next, your entire world is tilted on its axis. 1 minute, everything feels solid, and the next, you realize that what you thought was solid was just sand, waiting to slip through your fingers. I never thought this would happen. To be honest, I always considered myself a pretty easygoing guy, nonchalant, maybe even a little bit oblivious to the small signs around me. My life was comfortable, routine. I didn't question much. I had a wife, a steady job, a small but cozy house, and on the surface, everything seemed fine. There was no reason to rock the boat. But it was that very comfort that ended up being my downfall. It happened on a Tuesday night. Not a special night. Not a milestone. Just another Tuesday. Nothing different than any other weeknight. But for some reason, I felt a tug in my gut, a feeling that something wasn't quite right. You know that sensation? The one that creeps up on you without any warning. I was sitting on the couch, flipping through an old magazine I'd picked up at a thrift store, while she was in the kitchen, preparing a simple dinner. Her name's Claire. We had been married for 7 years, almost 8. And as I sat there, I realized I couldn't remember the last time we really connected. Not in the way we used to, anyway. It wasn't that she was distant in an overt way. She didn't shut me out or get angry or cold. It was more like a slow fade, like she was a little less present with each passing day. Little things like less eye contact, more time spent on her phone, more space between us on the couch. And yet, I didn't ask. I didn't dig. It wasn't that I didn't care, but I suppose I was afraid of what I might find. That Tuesday night, however, was different. Something in the air felt off, but I ignored it. Maybe because I didn't want to confront what was really happening. I thought I was imagining it. Dinner's ready. Claire called from the kitchen, her voice cheerful as always. But it sounded distant. I pushed the thought aside and walked to the kitchen. She was stirring something in a pot, humming lightly, completely absorbed in what she was doing. She didn't even notice when I stood there for a moment, watching her. I didn't know why, but I felt the need to ask her something. A simple question that would have been inconsequential any other day, but that night felt different. I had no idea how much it would change everything. Claire, I started hesitating. She glanced up at me, waiting. Have you been happy? It wasn't even the best way to phrase it, but it was all I could come up with in that moment. Her face flickered with something, surprise, confusion, and she put the spoon down, turning to face me fully. Happy, she echoed, her voice soft, a little unsure. Of course I am. Why would you ask me that? I shrugged, trying to play it cool. I don't know. I guess I've been thinking lately. Things feel a little different between us. Not bad, just different. There was a long pause as she studied me, her eyes narrowing slightly, but she didn't say anything at first. I could see the gears turning in her head, trying to decide if she should lie or if she should tell the truth. Finally, she spoke. I'm just tired. Work, you know. Things have been a bit stressful. I nodded, but there was something about her answer that didn't sit right with me. It was too rehearsed, too convenient. The words were almost robotic. Right? I said slowly, trying to read her. But she was already looking away, back at the stove. I wanted to press her, to ask more questions, but I didn't. I didn't want to seem paranoid. So we ate in silence. The meal was good, nothing spectacular, but comforting. Claire was the kind of person who could make even the simplest dish taste like something special. But tonight, I couldn't enjoy it. Every bite felt like chewing through cotton. I didn't want to be the kind of guy who overthought everything. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. But something in my gut told me that I was being naive, that something deeper was going on. And I couldn't shake the feeling that the answer was just within reach, if only I would dare to ask the right question. After dinner, we sat on the couch, as we always did. She picked up her phone and scrolled through it. As usual, I leaned back, trying to relax, but my mind kept racing. I couldn't stop thinking about how distant she felt, how she seemed so focused on everything else but me. That's when it happened. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table, vibrating against the wood, and she didn't even flinch. She didn't pick it up. She just kept scrolling, pretending like it wasn't there. That wasn't like her. I'd never been the jealous type, but something about her nonchalant attitude bothered me. Without thinking, I reached for the phone. My heart was pounding in my chest as I slid it closer to me, picking it up. It felt like the wrong thing to do, but I was already doing it. Claire's eyes snapped to mine, wide with alarm. What are you doing? She asked, her voice sharp, the tension in her posture sudden. I froze, phone in hand, caught in the act. I thought I heard it buzz. Who was that? Her lips pressed together in a thin line. She didn't answer immediately. Her gaze shifted from the phone to me, and I could see something flicker behind her eyes. It wasn't panic, exactly, but it was the kind of look you get when you've been caught doing something you didn't expect. It's just a message from a friend, she said quickly, her voice too smooth. I handed the phone back to her, but I didn't let go of the feeling that something wasn't right. That night, something inside me cracked open, and I couldn't ignore the creeping suspicion anymore. It wasn't the message itself, it was her reaction. I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to think the worst. But the more I sat there, the more the weight of the moment settled in. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I had built my life with, was slipping away, and I had no idea why. And as I lay in bed that night, wide awake, staring at the ceiling, I realized that everything I thought I knew was about to be shattered. I couldn't sleep that night. My mind was buzzing, my thoughts racing in circles. I kept replaying the events of the evening over and over, trying to make sense of everything. Claire had always been an open book to me, until recently. Now, it felt like I was reading a novel written in a language I didn't understand. The phone buzzed again. This time, I heard it clearly. The sound sliced through the stillness of the room like a knife. Claire didn't move. I glanced at her, lying next to me, her back turned, the rhythmic rise and fall of her breathing the only indication that she was still awake. I didn't want to be the kind of guy who snooped. I didn't want to be paranoid, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized that something had changed in her. The message had been from someone named Mark, the same name that had popped up on her phone before. But what really bothered me was the way she reacted, like she wasn't expecting it, like it was something she wanted to hide. My heart was pounding now, and the question that had been quietly festering in the back of my mind screamed for attention. Was there someone else? I stared at the ceiling, the weight of the question pressing down on me. I didn't know how long I lay there, but eventually, sleep came, though it was fitful, haunted by flashes of doubt and suspicion. The next morning, Claire woke up early as she always did. She slipped out of bed and started getting ready for work, moving through her routine with a speed and precision I'd seen 100 times before. But this time, there was something off about it. She didn't kiss me goodbye like she usually did. She didn't even acknowledge me when I mumbled something half asleep. It wasn't like her. I tried to shake it off. Maybe I was overthinking things. Maybe I was reading too much into a few strange moments. But the feeling wouldn't go away. When I got up a few hours later, I found the house eerily quiet. Claire was gone, leaving behind the faint smell of her perfume lingering in the air. But there was something else, something strange. Her laptop was left open on the kitchen table. Normally, she'd never leave it like that. She was meticulous about securing her things, always closing her laptop when she wasn't using it. But today, it was left wide open, the screen dimly lit. Without even thinking, I approached it. My pulse quickened as I hovered over her laptop, my hand hovering just above the keyboard. I knew I shouldn't look, but the temptation was unbearable. This wasn't who I was, but the nagging feeling in my gut pushed me forward. I sat down at the table, my fingers trembling as I moved the mouse. The screen came to life. At first, it was just the usual, emails, work-related documents, nothing unusual. But then I saw it. A folder labeled Vacation Ideas. It wasn't that unusual, but something about it felt off. Claire had never been the type to plan vacations alone. We always talked about them together. I clicked on the folder, and inside were a series of messages between Claire and Mark. They weren't just casual exchanges. The tone was flirtatious, intimate. My stomach sank as I read the words. I miss you more than you know. Can't wait for the weekend. I leaned back in my chair, a cold sweat forming on my forehead. This wasn't some innocent friendship. The messages were too charged, too personal. The worst part? The last message was the most chilling of all. It was dated just a few days ago. I'll make it up to you, I promise. I couldn't breathe. My thoughts spun in every direction. Was she cheating on me? Was this something I had missed all along? My head was spinning. I felt like the world around me was unraveling. The more I read, the more the pieces of this puzzle began to fall into place. I should have closed the laptop immediately, should have walked away, but I couldn't. My hands were shaking, my mind racing. The message from Mark felt like a slap to the face, but it was the silence that followed that really scared me. The silence in my own head. The feeling that I was in some kind of a nightmare, but I couldn't wake up from it. I clicked on the thread, reading through more of their conversations. They'd been meeting up, making plans. At one point, Mark had even suggested they go away for the weekend, just the two of them. I felt sick to my stomach. This wasn't some innocent flirtation. Claire had been lying to me. For how long? I had no idea, but I couldn't deny it anymore. The signs had been there, and I'd been too blind to see them. I sat there, staring at the screen, unable to process what I was looking at. How had I missed this? How had I not noticed the small things, the subtle changes in her behavior, the late nights, the evasiveness? Was I really that naive? I heard the sound of Claire's car pulling into the driveway, the screech of the brakes echoing in my ears. My heart started pounding. I knew I had to confront her. There was no way I could just let this slide. But a part of me, a small, desperate part, wanted to pretend I hadn't seen anything. To go back to the way things were before everything started to unravel. But I knew I couldn't. Not now. I slammed the laptop shut, my heart racing as I moved it to the side of the table. The sound of her footsteps grew louder as she approached the front door, and I found myself frozen in place, unsure of what I was going to say, unsure of how to face her. She entered the house, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. "Hey," she called out, her voice light, almost too light. She didn't sound like she had any idea what I had just uncovered. I turned to face her, my stomach a knot of tension. "Hi," I said, trying to sound normal, trying to keep my voice steady, but I could feel the tremor in it. The facade I'd been holding up was starting to crack. "How was your day?" Claire smiled at me, her face lighting up with that familiar warmth, the one I thought I knew so well. "It was good," she said, stepping toward the kitchen. "Busy, but you know how it is." I nodded, but I wasn't listening to her. My mind was still racing with the thoughts of what I had just read, and I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on me. "Claire," I said, my voice quieter than I intended. "We need to talk." She stopped in her tracks, turning to look at me with a confused expression. "Talk about what?" Her brow furrowed slightly, but she didn't seem to understand the gravity of what I was about to say. I didn't want to do this, didn't want to confront her with the knowledge I had just uncovered, but I knew I had no choice. "I know about Mark," I said, my voice finally giving way to the anxiety that had been building inside me. Her face instantly went pale, her lips pressing into a thin line as she stood frozen for a moment. "What do you mean?" she asked, but the way she said it, too quickly, too defensively, told me everything I needed to know. She was caught. "I saw the messages," I continued, the words spilling out faster than I could control. "I saw everything, Claire. The plans, the flirting, the lies." Her eyes darted around the room, her hands twisting nervously at her sides. "It's not what you think," she said, her voice shaking, but I wasn't sure if it was fear or guilt. Don't lie to me." I cut her off, my voice rising now. I could feel the anger bubbling inside me, but it wasn't just anger. It was hurt. It was betrayal. "I saw everything. You've been seeing him behind my back this entire time, and you didn't think I'd ever find out?" Claire opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. For a moment, I thought she might cry, or maybe she would try to explain. But instead, she just stood there, looking like a deer caught in headlights. I didn't mean for it to happen like this," she said, her voice trembling, but her words were empty. She was trying to justify it. She was trying to explain away something that didn't need an explanation. "How long?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper now. I needed to know. I needed to hear it from her. "How long has this been going on?" She looked down, unable to meet my eyes. I could feel my chest tightening, my breath coming in shallow gasps. "I don't know," she whispered, almost too quietly for me to hear. "A few months, maybe longer. I don't know how it happened." A few months. That's all it took. A few months to destroy everything we had built together. A few months to tear apart a marriage that I had thought was unbreakable. "I thought you loved me," I said, the words choking me. I couldn't hold back the tears anymore, couldn't keep up the facade of control. "I thought we were happy. But this isn't love." Claire stepped forward, her hand reaching out, but I stepped back, shaking my head. "No, don't touch me. I can't even look at you right now." She stood there, motionless, as if she didn't know what to do. I felt a cold emptiness settle over me, a numbness that replaced the anger. I had never imagined it would come to this. Claire was still standing in front of me, her face a mix of regret and shame, but it was too late. I had already lost her. I had already lost everything. The silence between us was suffocating. I stood there, heart pounding, while Claire just looked at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of regret and fear. She opened her mouth a few times as if to say something, but the words wouldn't come out. And honestly, I didn't think I wanted to hear them. You thought you could keep this hidden? I finally managed to say, my voice low and steady, though it shook with the weight of the moment. After everything we've been through, you thought I wouldn't notice? She took a shaky breath, her face contorting with guilt. John, I never meant for it to happen. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Not supposed to be like this? I repeated, the sting of her words like a slap in the face. You're telling me it just happened? That you just fell into some affair without realizing it? Claire stepped back, her shoulders sagging. It wasn't about you, she said quietly, almost as if the words were escaping before she could stop them. It's not about us. It was something I've been dealing with inside myself for a while now. And then Mark, he was there? I shook my head, trying to process her words. So that's it. That's your excuse? You're just dealing with something? What does that even mean, Claire? She bit her lip, her eyes welling up with tears. I don't know how to explain it. It's not as simple as just a mistake. I was lonely, and I started pulling away from you. And then I found someone who made me feel seen. It wasn't supposed to go this far. I didn't want to hurt you. The words were spilling out now, the explanation coming faster, more desperate. But it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to make me feel any less betrayed, any less broken. You were lonely? I scoffed, the bitterness creeping into my voice. You couldn't talk to me about it? We've been together for years, Claire. We've been through everything together, and you couldn't even tell me that you were feeling. What? Invisible? Her head dropped, the weight of my words sinking in. I'm sorry, she whispered, but the apology felt hollow. She'd said it so many times before. I didn't know if I could believe it anymore. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said, my voice strained, the reality of what was happening crashing down around me. I don't know if I can even look at you the same way again. Claire stepped toward me again, her hands trembling as she reached out for mine. Please, John. I know I've destroyed everything, but I swear, I never meant to. You mean everything to me. I was just so confused. I didn't know what to do. I recoiled, taking a step back. The space between us seemed to grow, and with it, the distance in my heart. No, I said firmly. You don't get to say that. You don't get to pull me back in with more lies, more excuses. I've been living in a lie for months. She collapsed onto the couch, her hands covering her face as she sobbed. The sound was raw, heartbreaking, but it didn't change anything. I never wanted to hurt you, John. I didn't know what I was doing. I stood there, frozen, the air thick with the tension of everything left unsaid. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The only sound in the room was Claire's soft crying and the ticking of the clock on the wall. The weight of everything she'd said, the affair, the lies, the betrayal, hung in the air like a suffocating fog. And no matter how much I wanted to believe her, no matter how much I wanted to hold on to the love we once had, I knew deep down that nothing would ever be the same again. I couldn't erase the picture of her and Mark. I couldn't forget the feeling of betrayal that had settled in my chest like a heavy stone. I had to make a decision. And as much as it hurt, I knew it was time for me to walk away. I think you should leave, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Claire froze, her sobs halting for a moment as she looked up at me, shock and disbelief written on her face. What? I think it's time, I repeated, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. I think you need to leave, Claire. I need space. I need time to figure out what the hell I'm supposed to do with all of this. Her face crumpled in pain. John, please, don't do this. But it was too late. The damage had been done. The trust had been shattered, and there was nothing left between us but the wreckage of what we once had. The door clicked shut behind Claire, and I stood there for what felt like an eternity, my ears ringing with the silence that followed. She hadn't said much when she left, just a few broken apologies and a look of sheer devastation in her eyes. But I couldn't bring myself to feel anything. Not anymore. I glanced around the house, now empty without her presence. The furniture, the pictures on the walls, even the kitchen table, everything seemed so unfamiliar. It was as if the very place that had once been home had turned into a stranger's house, and I was the stranger. I could still hear the echo of her voice, the way she'd begged me not to end it. Please, John, she'd said, her face crumpled with regret. Don't throw everything away. But what was left? What was there to save when the foundation of everything had crumbled? The room felt like it was closing in on me. I needed to get out, to breathe. I grabbed my jacket and stepped outside, the cold night air hitting me like a slap to the face. It was a clear night, the stars shining brightly above me, but I couldn't find any comfort in their beauty. I found myself walking, aimlessly, down the quiet streets of our neighborhood. The rhythmic sound of my footsteps was the only thing that kept me grounded, but even that felt distant, as though I were walking in a dream. My mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. How long had this been going on? Had she really been seeing Mark for months, or had it been longer? The more I thought about it, the more questions I had, but no answers. The worst part was knowing that Claire had kept me in the dark for so long. She'd been living a double life, and I'd been too blind to see it. I stopped in front of a small cafe we used to go to together. It had always been our place, a spot we found early in our relationship and frequented often. Now, it just felt like another reminder of how much had changed. The thought of it brought a fresh wave of anger crashing over me, and I shoved my hands into my pockets, turning away from the cafe. I didn't know where I was going, but I couldn't go home. Not yet. Not while everything still felt like it was unraveling. As I wandered through the streets, memories of our time together kept flooding back. Our first date, the trips we took, the quiet nights spent laughing over silly jokes. I had loved her. I had trusted her with everything. But now, it felt like none of that mattered. What happened to us? How did we go from the people who couldn't imagine life without each other to this? I found myself at a park bench, the soft sound of the wind rustling through the trees filling the air. I sat down, staring at the dark sky above me. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing, that something had been taken from me, and I wasn't sure I would ever get it back. I pulled my phone from my pocket, my fingers hesitating over the screen. I almost called Claire. Almost. The desire to hear her voice, to find some kind of closure, was almost overwhelming. But I knew better. I knew that if I called her now, it would only complicate things further. I wasn't sure how long I stayed there, lost in my thoughts. All I knew was that the man I had been just hours ago, the man who believed in love and trust, felt like someone else entirely. I must have lost track of time because by the time I finally returned home, the sun had dipped below the horizon, and the cool air was starting to bite at my skin. My hands were shoved deep into my pockets, my mind still a blur, and all I could think about was how this all felt like a bad dream. I wasn't sure what I expected when I walked through the door, but it definitely wasn't the sight of Claire standing in the hallway, her suitcase by the door, her eyes red from crying. She looked like she had been waiting for me, like she'd known I'd come back eventually. And in some twisted way, she thought maybe she could fix this. "John," she whispered, her voice cracking as she stepped toward me. "Can we talk?" I froze. The last thing I wanted to do was talk to her. But then again, I wasn't sure I could keep running from this. Part of me wanted to walk away, leave her standing there with her suitcase and broken apologies, but another part of me needed answers. Needed to know why, needed to understand what the hell had happened. I didn't say anything at first. I just stood there, staring at her. She looked so small, so fragile, like a version of herself I didn't recognize. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice barely audible. "I shouldn't have come back. But I had to see you. You should have left when I told you to." I replied, my voice steady despite the churn of emotions inside me. "There's nothing left to say, Claire." Her eyes filled with tears, and she reached out for me, but I stepped back, avoiding her touch. "Please, just hear me out. I don't want to lose you. I never wanted to hurt you." I shook my head, my frustration growing. "It's too late for that. You've already hurt me. You've already destroyed everything we built together. How can I trust you again after all this?" "I made a mistake," she pleaded, her voice breaking. "A huge one. But it wasn't about you. It was about me. I was lost, and I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't know how to talk to you." I felt a pang of anger rise up in my chest. "You couldn't talk to me? You've been with me for years, Claire. We were supposed to be a team. And you chose to lie to me. You chose him." She flinched, the words hitting her like a slap. I hated the way she looked at me, as though she expected me to offer some kind of forgiveness, some kind of understanding. "I was wrong," she said softly, her voice almost a whisper. "I know I can't take back what I did, but I'm asking for one last chance. Please, John, Don't throw us away without trying to fix it. I closed my eyes, running a hand through my hair. I didn't know what I was supposed to say. I didn't know what I was supposed to feel. Part of me wanted to believe her, to think that maybe we could somehow work through this. But then I remembered the messages, the lies, the hurt I felt when I realized how much she'd hidden from me. I don't know if I can believe you anymore, I said, my voice quiet but firm. You've made me question everything I thought we had. I can't just forget that, Claire. She took a step back, her face crumpling as she nodded slowly. I understand, she said, her voice barely a whisper. I know I've lost you. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. For everything. I stood there for a moment, caught in the limbo between wanting to hold her and wanting to walk away. But the truth was, I had already started to walk away. Whether I was physically leaving the room or not, I was already gone. And Claire could see it. The realization hit her the moment our eyes met. She'd lost me. She'd lost us. Without another word, she picked up her suitcase and walked out the door. I didn't follow. I didn't try to stop her. As the door clicked shut behind her, I realized something I hadn't fully understood before. This wasn't just about what she'd done to me. It was about what I had lost in myself. The person I was before this mess, before the lies and the betrayal. I wasn't sure if I could ever get him back. The house felt different without her. The silence was oppressive, almost suffocating. Every corner seemed to hold a memory, a whisper of the life we had shared. But none of it felt real anymore. I walked through the rooms aimlessly, touching the edges of picture frames, picking up a forgotten book from the coffee table, and setting it down again. It was as though I was trying to make sense of what had just happened, but nothing made sense. I had spent years building a life with Claire, and now everything was in ruins. The weight of it all, of her betrayal, her lies, and the way she had slowly slipped away from me, crushed me more than I thought it would. The anger was still there, but it was muted, buried beneath a heavy layer of exhaustion and grief. I found myself standing by the window, looking out at the street. The world outside carried on, indifferent to the mess inside my home. People were walking their dogs, kids were riding bikes, life was moving forward. And here I was, stuck in a moment I couldn't escape. I tried to reach out to friends, to anyone who might listen. But the calls went unanswered. Maybe they were too busy, or maybe they didn't know how to deal with the mess that had become my life. I didn't blame them. I didn't know how to deal with it either. I glanced down at my phone, a text from Claire sitting unread on the screen. I had deleted her number, blocked her from everything. But the message was still there, a final attempt at reconciliation, no doubt. I didn't need to see it. I already knew what it said. I couldn't bring myself to open it. The truth was, I didn't want to forgive her. Not yet. I didn't want to be the guy who let it go and swept it under the rug. I needed time. I needed space to process the betrayal, to understand how everything had gone so wrong. Days passed, but nothing changed. I found myself slipping into a routine, going to work, coming home to an empty house, and sleeping in the bed we once shared. The loneliness was unbearable. But what was worse was the quiet. The absence of Claire's voice, her laughter, the way she used to fill the house with energy. It was all gone now, leaving nothing but a hollow echo. One night, I sat on the couch, staring at the TV, but not really watching it. The hum of the screen was the only sound in the room. I couldn't remember the last time I had felt this disconnected from everything. And then, out of nowhere, the doorbell rang. I froze, not expecting anyone. No one ever came by anymore. I hadn't seen or heard from Claire since she left. My heart raced for a moment, thinking it was her. But when I opened the door, it wasn't Claire standing there. It was Mark. I stood there, stunned for a moment, unsure of what to say. He was looking at me with an expression that seemed half confused and half apologetic. "John," he said quietly, shifting on his feet. "I need to talk to you." My pulse spiked, and a wave of anger surged through me. "You've got a lot of nerve showing up here," I spat, barely able to contain the fury that bubbled to the surface. "What the hell do you want?" He didn't back away. In fact, he stepped forward, his face serious. "Look, I know you're pissed. And you have every right to be. But I didn't come here to fight. I came here because I owe you the truth." I blinked, momentarily stunned by his words. The truth? The truth about what? "I'm not proud of what happened between me and Claire," he said, his voice low. "But I didn't know what was going on with her. I didn't know you two were having problems. I swear. I'm not here to make excuses. I thought you deserved to hear it from me." I stood there, not sure whether to slam the door in his face or hear him out. The anger was still there, but a small part of me, maybe the part that wanted closure, wanted to understand, told me to listen. I didn't know she was married when we started seeing each other, he continued, his gaze steady. I thought it was just a fling. I thought she was done with you. But when I realized how deep this was, I knew I was part of the mess. I never meant to hurt you, man. I ran a hand through my hair, trying to process what he was saying. You really think you can just show up here and apologize? Like that's going to fix anything? Mark didn't flinch. He just stood there, waiting for me to say something else. And for the first time in days, I felt like I was on the verge of some kind of breakthrough. Not with Claire, not with him, but with myself. I didn't have to forgive him. I didn't have to forgive anyone. But for the first time in a long time, I realized I was starting to let go. I had to. I don't know what you want from me, Mark, I said, my voice tight. But you're right about one thing. You owe me the truth. So, thanks for that. Mark nodded and took a step back, still looking at me. I'm sorry for what I did. I never wanted this to happen. Before I could say anything else, he turned and walked away. And I stood there, watching him go, feeling strangely empty. It wasn't about him anymore. It wasn't about Claire. It was about me. About finally accepting that I didn't need them to find peace. The next few days felt like a blur. I went through the motions, waking up, going to work, coming home to the same empty house. But something had shifted inside me. The meeting with Mark, surprising as it was, had made me realize that I could take control of my life again. I didn't need to hold on to the anger, the hurt, or the memories of what had been. I needed to let go. I started small. I cleaned the house, really cleaned it. The kitchen, the living room, the bedroom. It wasn't about making the place look perfect, but about making it mine again. I donated old clothes, threw away the things that reminded me of a life I couldn't return to. And with every small change, I felt a little lighter. I also started doing things for myself. I signed up for the gym, something I'd been meaning to do for months but had put off. I went hiking on the weekends, something I used to love doing when Claire and I first met. I reconnected with old friends, people I had lost touch with because I'd been too consumed by the relationship. I even started cooking again, experimenting with recipes I hadn't made in years. It wasn't easy. There were still moments of doubt, still times when the weight of everything felt overwhelming. But they became less frequent, and when they did come, I didn't let them control me. I was building something new, something for myself. One evening, about a month after Mark had come by, I sat at the same cafe where Claire and I used to go. The same spot we'd claimed as our own, now filled with strangers. It felt surreal, but not in a painful way. It was as if I was finally seeing things for what they were, old memories, no longer tied to the pain. As I sipped my coffee, I checked my phone. There was a message from Claire. I had deleted her number, blocked her everywhere, but somehow, I still found myself thinking about her. She was part of my past, a chapter that had ended. But there it was, her name on the screen. I hesitated, but instead of feeling dread or anger, I felt calm. It wasn't a long message. It was simple. I hope you're doing okay. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. I hope you find the happiness you deserve. I stared at the message for a while. There was no anger in her words, no bitterness, just the quiet, distant understanding that we were both moving on. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I had already forgiven her, in my own way. Not for her sake, but for mine. I put my phone down and looked out at the world around me. The street, the people passing by, the soft light of the evening settling over everything. Life was moving on, and so was I. Slowly, but surely, I was healing. It was the first time in a long while that I felt truly free. Not from Claire, not from the past, but from the weight I had been carrying. I was ready to move forward. And for the first time in a while, I believed that things could get better. The past would always be there, but it didn't have to define me. And as the sun set on another day, I realized that while I couldn't change what had happened, I had the power to shape what came next. The future was mine to create, and I was finally ready to live it.